Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for spending your hour with us today for our Wednesday webinar series. We hope everyone is staying warm. My name is Alice Fox, and I am the Director of Talent Delivery at Talent Connections. I am joined by Susan Kent, Vice President of Career Spa, and John Palumbo, our Director of Marketing for Talent Connections. A few housekeeping items today for our webinar is that this is a 1-hour recorded webinar. If you have any technical questions, please email alicefox@talentconnections.net. Participants are muted, but we do have, this is our first time, we'll have our chat feature up and available. So please feel free to, and if you want to move over the slide for me one there, whoever is driving the boat. We will have our chat feature. Thank you. We will have our chat feature that is going today. So please feel free to communicate with us and interact with us that way. We also at the end will have the question and answers. So definitely want to make sure that you have your questions ready for Neil and Jonathan at the end. This webinar is also approved for 1 SHRM Professional Development credit, and that activity code will be given at the conclusion of this webinar. Today, I'm pleased to introduce Neil Morelli, PhD, is a partner and principal consultant at Workplace Labs. Dr. Morelli stands at the intersection of innovation in talent management and HR technology, bringing over 15 years of expertise in industrial organizational psychology. A respected thought leader, Dr. Morelli insights on AI and skills-based organizations regularly appear in major publications such as DICE, TechCrunch, Forbes, and Fast Company, and his research contributions span multiple books and peer-reviewed journals. Our next presenter is Jonathan Flower, is a partner and principal engineer at Workplace Labs, a seasoned technology leader with over a decade of experience in crafting enterprise solutions that bridge the gap between technical excellence and business strategy. He has scaled multiple engineering teams and implemented emerging technologies across many domains. He continues to partner with startups and established enterprises, helping them navigate technological transformations while focusing on delivering exceptional user experiences, strategic business value, and innovative AI-driven solutions. We are very excited to have Neil and Jonathan with us today in this hot topic of AI and how we can use it. So Neil and Jonathan, take it away.
Thanks, Alice. So good to be here with all of you. Thanks for taking some time out of your day, out of your week to spend it with us and talk about AI in the workplace. And in the workplace for most of us here means in HR. So what we are really wanting to focus on today is not a lot of hand waving around HR. We're not wanting just to talk about it in general, at a high level. We want to talk about it in very practical terms because with Workplace Labs, we really care about successful technology adoption in the workplace. And right now, that means that it's all about AI. I like this little chart here that I just noticed the other day. This was from a survey of 6,500 people, mostly knowledge workers, and they were asked to indicate all of the different tools they use. And I thought this was pretty interesting and a little bit surprising. OpenAI was at the top of the list, even above Gmail, above Slack, above Google Docs and the Google Suite. And maybe a little bit of sampling bias, but I think the point well taken is that we're all in this moment of generative AI meeting what we do on a day-to-day basis. I'm sure most of you have either played around with it or are already using it in your work. We see from surveys that came out 2023 and 2024 that 80% of folks are saying that it's improving their productivity. 2/3 of and above of leaders are saying that they're more likely to hire candidates with AI skills. So AI skills is becoming more and more important. Over half of executives are saying that AI adoption is going to be critical for their business's survival by 2030. So it's not just at an individual level, it's also at a team and at a business level. And it's redesigning all the things that we do from the ground up. So That's what we're getting into. That's why we think it's so important to talk about and to see how it integrates and intersects with HR work in particular. So I could tell you a lot of these different statistics and facts and figures, and you've probably heard or seen a slide very similar to the one I just showed you. But I think to really emphasize this point even further, I wanted to tell the story about Polaroid. And I'm sure most of us remember Polaroid, have used Polaroid pictures. And I think this story that has been told and retold by several folks, including Ethan Mollick at Wharton University, we have been thinking about Polaroid because, as you might recall, that it was very much a big, important business for quite a while. It was founded in 1937, but it went bankrupt in 2001. And what this figure shows us is that there's a gradual change and then a very sudden improvement that we see almost overnight. So what you see at the top is the relative pixel quality of Polaroid pictures compared to digital camera pictures over time. And so you see about 2.5 megapixels is where that kind of rough Polaroid quality was. Well, over a period of about 5 to 7 years, you see the picture quality of digital cameras getting better and better over time. And the figure on the bottom shows the relative sales of digital cameras compared to Polaroid camera sales. So for quite a while, for several years, it wasn't really noticeable about how Polaroid was, losing out in terms of sales and business relevance compared to digital cameras for a while. But then there was a good year or two where those two lines intersected. And from at least internally to within Polaroid, it probably felt like a pretty sudden change. What's happening? What's going on? We're all having to come to terms with this new business reality that we're in. But the point of this is that it's going to be gradual and then sudden. And I think that's really where we're at in this moment in time. The AI developments that we're all experiencing now have been gradual improvements. Many years going back into AI research and AI development, but really similar to when Netscape came out in 1994, making the internet more available and more accessible to the mainstream, to most of us. In a similar way, OpenAI and ChatGPT have made AI tools more available, more accessible to the mainstream and to most of us. And now we're seeing that very quick inflection point and crossover when now we're having to come to terms with what this means for all of us. So as we talk about the importance of AI, I don't think it's any secret. And again, I think most of us are already kind of incorporating it into our work. But we really feel that it's important to be even more intentional, especially as HR leaders and especially as HR practitioners, to be more intentional and have a more sophisticated point of view around what skills are necessary in the AI era as skills-based organizations become more of the norm. I've been very much a part of that scene for a little while now, focusing on measuring skills, on understanding skills and what are required within jobs. So skills over degrees, skills-based organizations taking hold, and AI skills being a part of that. But then also really being adaptable to change and really understanding where creativity, resilience, and adaptability are important for human work and where that intersects well with the AI tasks and augmentation and automation that are offered today. So I think from a big picture, kind of starting general, moving more specific, we really want people to develop more AI skills within the HR function and then help others within their workforce, within their organizations, build that AI literacy and those skills as well. And then that's going to lead to more success. So as I said, didn't want to be too hand wavy, too abstract or general with this conversation. We want to keep it real practical and grounded. And so we wanted to share just a few AI use cases beyond email. And I say beyond emails because when I talk to most HR folks in our nature of work, most people are saying, yeah, I use ChatGPT a lot to help me write emails and it's great. And for sure, that's a great use case. It really helps save some time. It helps us do better with communication. There are other things, basic content creation, as I said. I think most people are exploring those and seeing those, but we wanted to give a few other practical use cases beyond some of the obvious ones like that, and just maybe open your minds to see what's possible. So the first one here that I wanted to talk about was citizen development. And by citizen development, what I mean is when we think about software development or building or engineering software, like what Jonathan does, we oftentimes think about a very specialized, hyper-technical skill set that is really relegated to the people that have invested several years in developing that. And I still think that's very much going to be a part of the workforce. Technical roles and skills are still critical. But what we have now with ChatGPT, with Claude, with these other tools, is now more of the rest of us, the citizens, if you will, not the citizen soldiers, but the citizen developers to build our own automations and customations. And what I have here is just a little example from a great blog by Simon Willis. He talks about how he was working within some of the elements or the design work that he was doing that required CSS. And he didn't have time to learn and figure out all the different components of the CSS code he was writing. So he actually asked ChatGPT to build a CSS generator based off of some easily modifiable bars that he could drag around to kind of get the look and feel for what he was designing and building. And then it would generate from that the CSS that he needed. And then he could enter that into whatever program he was using. More of a design use case, maybe more of a front end type of use case here, maybe even a little bit technical. But I think it's a good example of saying, what are some of the things that you are doing on a regular basis that are repeatable, that maybe you having to reference some outside documentation quite frequently? And is there a small program, something that you could even get rid of in 6 months' time, but it's easy to create using something like ChatGPT? There are now more tools like that than ever that help you actually build some of these small automations and customizations to within the software that you have. So the takeaway from this one is to say the barrier to entry to doing any kind of work within software is much lower than it used to be. And it's good to start thinking in that way and to knowing that, hey, even in the line of HR work, there are some repeatable aspects of our jobs, of your jobs, that could be automated with a little bit of code that is now more easily written with ChatGPT. For instance, just one more quick example. Jonathan and I teach a program, we teach a mastermind that shows you how to build a custom GPT. And Jonathan's actually going to demo this for you in just a moment. So that's even a low code or a no code solution similar to what we're talking about now. So citizen developer, we're all now in that category thanks to these tools. If you're not going to be building small apps or automations, maybe you're doing some kind of formula writing. A lot of us use Excel. We're writing more and more complex formulas. This is the data analysis tool of the day for most of us. And I wanted to show just a little diagram that I used Claude to write for me. And you can't really see it. It's an eye chart here, but I think you get the idea that it not only can write the formula for you at the bottom, but it can also describe sort of the decision tree of explaining what that formula does. So not only could you use a tool like Claude or ChatGPT to help you write more sophisticated formulas, it can also help you explain or understand formulas that already exist in a visual way. So having this as a data analysis copilot can be really powerful. One more in a more of an HR context. LLMs and tools like ChatGPT are very good at taking on the persona that you give them. And this is one of the prompting principles that OpenAI and others talk about, is asking the model to mimic or simulate whatever persona you have in mind. And in this little screenshot, again, I by the way, I used Claude to make this, to visualize this for us. But I wanted to give you just for instance of saying, if you are in the business of employee listening, or you have a new policy or some other program or campaign that's rolling out for HR, a need that you have, you could simulate employee persona or employee representatives to get some back and forth reactions to whatever policy or program you're about to launch. It can help you think through some things. It can help you create good communications and messaging. It's not going to be 100% accurate, of course. The more contextual information you give it, it'll get better. But even just as a first take, a first cut against some of the things that you're already writing and planning, it can really be a helpful partner to really take on the perspective of, say, in this case, Alex's view and point of view around being a software engineer, working remotely, a certain amount of tenure. You can bake in a lot of those contextual elements that then give you a good rough cut at how some of your employees would react, or how you might be able to craft new messages that would resonate with them. So we think that these practical use cases are really important just to, again, open your minds. Maybe there's something, oh, hey, I do need help with some of my, Excel formulas and data analysis. Maybe that is new and worth exploring, or maybe, using customer personas is worth exploring. But I mean, we don't have all the time in the world to go through all the different use cases. And we really feel that at the end of the day, it's not for us to say, here are the top 10 use cases that you need to use AI for. Go and do that. Really, what is going to be helpful is for you to adopt and internalize a framework around the effective ways to use AI within your function, within your job, or within your business. And we've actually built a framework that's based on good research around technology adoption, around the organizational psychology literature, the workplace science literature. And we want to help walk you through a framework that gets you to more people adopting the tools that you roll out. So not wasting time and money in introducing new tools to your workforce, improving, having more positive attitudes towards things like AI, which can be pretty threatening to some folks. And then ultimately getting more productivity and job satisfaction is what we all care about. And really the takeaway from this model here, we don't have enough time to really unpack it, but what we want to do is focus on the business and talent needs. So the business objectives and the strategy that the business has, what moves the organization forward, translating that into a talent strategy, which is what most of us here care about, is on the HR side. How do we enable and execute on our business strategy in and through the people in the organization, which is one of our biggest and best assets? So how do we translate that into what people are doing and into who is in the organization? So once we have an idea of what we want to accomplish, well, we need to put that up against where we are generally for AI readiness. And we think about that in terms of skill threat and whether the business or the firm is supporting it. Again, don't have enough time to really unpack this, but what we want to say is that, does your culture really set us up for success with introducing a new technology and using technology in a more impactful way? And AI readiness helps us think through those things. It really gets at that kind of cultural environment. Just similar way that you might add someone new to the team. If you add a new technology, will it be rejected? Will it be accepted? And to what extent will people see it as a friend and an asset, not something that's a liability and a threat? So it's good to kind of think through that. And there's actually a bit of a process to uncover it. But at the end of the day, what we want to do is say we have a job to be done. So this is the job that is required by the organization. It maps to our talent strategy. We think it's a job that if we get some technology support, it's going to be accepted because we're at a high enough level of AI readiness. And then once we have that job in mind, we want to break it down into individual tasks and match that to a technology like ChatGPT that can help us accomplish that task. And when you go through that process, you end up with a good use case that's going to accomplish your goals and not get wholesale rejected by the people in the organization, by your team, maybe even by you individually. So that's helpful to think through, again, at sort of a framework conceptual level, what's going on, what's the process to get to a use case that really helps us make sure we're getting value from the technology, not starting with the technology and saying, here are all the different ways you can use it and go trial and error, brute force your way to the thing that makes the most sense. We start from the other direction, from identifying the use case, then matching it to the technology that makes sense. If that's all pretty conceptual, again, we want to make this as practical as possible. What we're going to do now is walk you through for instance, an example of what that kind of looks like. We're going to take a job to be done. In this case, for our talent strategy, we're going to assume we want to hire high quality talent into our organization that helps us accomplish our goals. And to do that, we have the task of writing a job description. something that you probably are all familiar with, have done multiple times or been a part of. So we want to break that job into the task of writing a job description. And then we're going to hire a tool to help us build that job description based on whether or not we think it's a good fit with what we need. And again, we're going to assume that, hey, ChatGPT is going to help us do that because we know that it's going to help streamline some things. We'll actually go into a little bit more of the specifics here in just a moment. But once we do that, then we're going to experiment with some prompting strategies that Jonathan's going to walk us through and show you what that actually looks like live. So we have our action plan. We have our job to be done. We're breaking it into tasks. We're using ChatGPT to help us, and we're going to experiment with prompts. Now we have this hands-on example, and there's a QR code. If you want to follow along with us as we go through this, we actually have a link to a document that we've prepared for you that walks you through all these steps. You can access it and reference it after the webinar today, and it'll just be a way that you can follow along. But Jonathan's going to go into this site and flip over and do really a live demo of some of the things that we've been talking about in general. So
Thanks, Neil.
Yeah. Maybe once you pull that up, let me just tee up a little bit of the job to be done here in the task.
So when you click that link, you should see something like this.
Yep. Yeah, so this document, as I said, walks you through what you'll see now in live within ChatGPT. And as I said, it's building a job description. And we know that quality job descriptions matter because we want to attract the right candidates. It's a way for us to signal what the job entails, why the job exists, to candidates that are well suited and qualified for those jobs. And the clearer we do that, in a more compelling, accurate way we do that, we're setting ourselves up for success from the get-go. We're setting all of our screening activities up better. We're setting our recruiters and our hiring managers up better. We're saving us a lot of time if we can communicate the essential nature of the job to job candidates. And I'm really passionate about this. In organizational psychology, I've focused on talent assessment, talent acquisition for quite a while. And I really think job descriptions are this unsung hero. When done well, they can really offer us a lot of benefit. So I wrote a little book chapter about some evidence-based practices to build good job descriptions. And Jonathan's taken that and run with it to build this custom GPT. So over to you.
Thanks, Neil. One of the things I want to highlight from what Neil just spoke about is how, he suggested using ChatGPT or some AI model to kind of role play with it and try and gauge any objections, right? And so what we have found with artificial intelligence in particular, as people are considering adopting this technology, is that some people do have big objections. They feel threatened by it. And so, one use case to just kind of, give you a practical way to apply this would be to maybe put together some content about a new AI solution that you want to share with your team, and you describe the persona of some of the members on your team and ask it, hey, what are some of the potential objections, or how might this make people feel threatened, and get some feedback before you start to try to encourage people to adopt this powerful new tool. So with the job descriptions, you can see we're starting with the business strategy, with the talent strategy. We want the job to be done here is to improve our hiring by having really high quality job descriptions. And like Neil said, this has maybe a little bit bigger impact on your organization than you might realize. And I didn't mean to click that. And then the next step after we identify some of the, once we identify the business strategy, then we would start to assess some of the AI readiness. And so I'm not sure I'll have a chance to assess it right now, but we would start asking questions like, how many of y'all are using ChatGPT? How many of y'all have created a custom GPT in ChatGPT? I'd be curious to know. And so after we have some kind of an assessment of the readiness, the biggest question at that point is the capability. Oh, go ahead, Susan. Your hand is raised. Is that intentional? Okay, I'll move on. The biggest question a lot of people have is the capability. Is the AI capable of accomplishing this task, or is it capable of assisting me with this task? And part of what Neil and I have found to be the best and a very productive way to figure that out is to build a low stakes experiment. You can test this out by just trying it. Can it actually help me with this task? And so here, for example, we have our job description builder, and here is what it looks like. And I've already started the conversation with this job description builder so that we can go through the demo a little more quickly. So I start with saying hello, and I'll also often tell it thank you and give it feedback, like telling it that this is great. That is coming from it's Connor. I can't remember his last name. Do you happen to remember, Neil, off the top of your head?
Yeah, Connor Grennan. Yep.
Connor Grennan suggests that when we're talking to LLMs, we use polite language like that in order to kind of trick ourselves into talking like we're talking to a human. Now, using that language doesn't actually benefit the AI. It could care less. What it does is it benefits us in how we're talking to it, because the AI benefits and performs better when we talk to it more like a human. So I start off with hello, and then we get into, it's telling me some of its capabilities. And then I tell it that I want to create a job description for a principal software engineer at Microsoft. And what this is doing is this is reviewing some of Neil's research on creating high quality job descriptions, and it's guiding me along how to create one. So it's giving me some advice on creating a company overview as well as a job mission. So I've actually used another custom GPT to help me create a company overview and pasted it in here. And then it asks me about the job mission, and I tell it that this role will be responsible for driving innovative AI features. And now it's asking me about the job mission. And so the mission, or no, that was the job mission. And now it's asking me, does this align with my expectations? I could tweak it at this point, but I'm going to proceed with outlining the duties and outcomes. So I'm going to say that they're going to be responsible for integrating AI into Windows in intuitive ways. And now it's going to start guiding me on the job duties and outcomes. Does this revised mission? This looks great. Oh, it actually didn't follow my instructions like I intended to. It adjusted the job mission instead of adding this to the job duties. And so one of the things that is, often not appreciated when you're talking to these LLMs is that you can have a conversation. And so I'll just tell it in dialogue. I wanted to do the job, not part of the job mission. Just like you would if you were talking to an intern and guiding them through helping you with a task. And so here we go. Now it helped me generate some job duties and outcomes based off of what I typed. Just go ahead and say, this looks great.
Hey, Jonathan, can I point out just a couple things that just strike me as someone that is thinking about job descriptions, wanting to write them well, and
Please.
how this compares to that process that I think most of us are familiar with. And I think one of the biggest things is that as you're seeing what Jonathan's demonstrating here is this back and forth that happens. I think what a lot of people do when they get into ChatGPT for the first time is first of all, they start with a brand new kind of blank conversation and they maybe give it a little bit of context and then they're maybe describing what they need. And then it's doing its best to populate what you're looking for, and it's wanting to make you happy. So it's looking for ways to do that, and it's following your instructions. But because there's not a ton of context, there's not a ton of referential information, and then it's really designed to try to give you something that is going to make you happy. It's going to give you some generic or vanilla output and a result that I think when most people look at it, they're like, this isn't working for me. Doesn't have enough detail. It's not in the right format. And what I think Jonathan's describing and showing here is that this is a custom GPT that we've specified some system instructions. We fed in referential information and a knowledge base that it uses to get to a much better outcome that really kind of comes at the end of a conversation that we've had with it. So a couple just, principles there to me is like, first of all, having a conversation just like you would with an intern, as Jonathan mentioned, and then having the know-how and awareness to set up the contextual information that it needs to give you the best quality answer possible. And to know that that is going to be some back and forth. It's not going to be a one-shot attempt, and giving it enough of those advantages to make sure that you're successful with it as well.
Thanks, Neil. That's so key to really unlocking what is powerful about these large language models.
I would love to hear from anyone in the chat if you've tried to write job descriptions with ChatGPT before. What's gone well? What's not gone so well? What are some other things, like maybe some other success cases that you've had or failure cases? What's worked well for you? As Jonathan's letting it run here in the background, one little cool thing as well is that getting it into the format that you want, it has the capability of doing that. So once we've ended up at the output and the results that we need, it's going to create a Word document because we've asked it for one in the right format.
I'm pretty sure it's going to fail, which happens. This happens sometimes. And so I might try again later, or I might ask it to respond with Markdown or some other format, whatever your preferred flavor is. And so the other thing that I wanted to show real quick is that the way that I created this custom GPT is that I'm here on my Chat GPT page, and I'm going to click up on my initials, and then I'm going to go to my GPTs. Now, I have a few, but the way you get started is you click on Create a GPT. And what I love about how OpenAI has created this tool to build custom GPTs is that they have two tabs here. I can either paste in instructions that I've prepared or thought about, or I can just start talking to it and tell it what I want it to help me with.
Yeah, I think that's a principle that we talk a lot about when we are coaching and training people how to use these tools is we want to turn to the tool for help in using it, which is completely foreign. It was definitely a new thing for me to realize is usually you can't ask the tool for input and advice on how to use the tool itself. You got to go to outside documentation. You have to get additional support. Now, there are good ways to learn best practices around that, but even that is a whole new way of interacting with technology that's really fascinating. And thanks for some of the comments in the chat here. That's great. Yolanda, you're trying it out, and I don't know if you want to follow up to this, but would love to hear if you did this kind of iterative back and forth, if you used other kind of background system instructions to really coax it and get it into a place that you find that the output was better. Did you go through multiple waves and rounds of iterations? Something good to learn a little bit more about. But that's one of the main takeaways from this demo here is not only the power of the custom GPT feature and relatively how simple it is to set it up with some guidance and a little bit of instruction, but also that once we have set it up that way, it is a back and forth conversation, not a one-stop input-output type of interaction. Great, that's great to hear.
And so just to kind of round this out, after I've created this and maybe experimented with it and iterated on it several times, I can share this with people via a link, or I could even publish it to the store. And so if you have ChatGPT teams, I can actually share it. I could also just share it with my specific team. And what's powerful about that is that I could do that right now and share this with y'all. You saw how fast that was. And so if I had something that I thought had some potential, I could share it with my team, engage their engagement with it, get some feedback from them, and validate the capability and whether this, custom GPT is capable of helping with whatever this task to be done is.
That's a great point. And it's a picture that I want to paint for everyone here that while these tools can really help us at an individual level within our personal work, we can be more efficient, it can save us some time. It can provide all of the feedback and the input that kind of gets us out of our own heads in a new way. One thing to really think about, and this is where we have more impact as HR practitioners, it's where we offer more value to the business, is thinking about these GPTs or these AI assistants as a tool that we can offer to our wider organization. For instance, if we had, say, a structured interview guide that we asked our hiring managers to follow to build something that is within bounds, within the guidelines, and within an accepted set of items or questions within our interview, but could still feel somewhat form fit and customized to that individual hiring manager's needs and preferences, and maybe even the background of the candidate. These types of GPTs and tools can be user-facing, maybe just as an internal tool or assistant that you make available to your wider audience, your wider employee base, and can get them to a better outcome and something that's more personalized and customized to them through having one of these customizations and these conversations rather and interactions that we've described here. That's where I think that this gets really, really interesting. It's expanding out and amplifying what we all do as HR practitioners. It's offering more evidence-based practice to the business, to end users, and just making it easier for everyone. So that's where I think there are really big opportunities for more HR folks to learn these types of skills and bring these tools to bear. I think we've got a few minutes for some questions before we turn it back over to Alice and team. And it looks like, Jonathan, we got a question from Daniel. He says, say my company has a particular format, so they've got to have overview, tasks, responsibilities for job descriptions. Can we customize what we saw here to fit that format? What would that look like?
Yes. So that would be something that, oh, actually, I wanted to show I'll show this in a second, but the idea is that inside of that custom GPT panel, when you go to the settings view, I can upload examples. So say you have an existing job description, kind of like a template. You could upload that as a document for the custom GPT to follow that template. There's another version of the custom GPT that's actually specifically for just revising existing job descriptions. And so that's another, way you might go about it.
I also want to give you another, for instance, about another, so how else to use these GPTs. And we talked about it a little bit already in terms of mimicking or simulating an employee's viewpoint that can help us, provide feedback and some direction to anything that we're working on. Another way to think about it is simulating or mimicking job experts. And so that could be something. So Yolanda, you mentioned you were using ChatGPT to build a job description for a startup. With a startup, we don't have a ton of people in those individual roles to give us good inputs about what the job entails. And I mean, this is a huge mistake that most people make, is they take an existing job description and they copy paste, and then they make a few modifications to it without really knowing at a deeper level what's going on the ground when it comes to that job. But the catch-22 there is you don't have the job experts to interview or to really flesh that out. Or maybe you're begging, pleading with hiring managers, please update this for me and give it to me. And they're saying, well, I'm just too busy. I can't. You do the best, use this old one, go forward. And we get into this misalignment and this disconnect with what that job description describes and entails and what candidates are coming to the job expecting and looking for. And we're just starting off on the wrong foot in a lot of ways. What if you could simulate some of those job experts with some more contextual information and ask the model to mimic that job expert, to provide at least a good, again, first rough cut, first draft around what that job description entails from that perspective, especially helpful in a smaller business or group like a startup. So again, thinking about how to use these models as persona taking, mimicking or simulating human perspectives. I wouldn't scale that up or take that too far to where you're over relying on that perspective. I think it's good to get some confirmation evidence, but even then the confirmation is way easier than starting with a blank page, right? So it's more directionally correct and it's contextualized, but then you follow it up with maybe a little bit of expert advice and input from someone that you can rely on and trust just to verify everything. So something else to think about there.
And so I'll mention real quick, it sounds like maybe the link to the job description assistant wasn't working. I just updated it. So if you refresh, hopefully it will start working. And then for the job description builder, you can upload files here. This is on the configure tab. And so this would be a perfect spot to upload like a template job description that is specific for your company. And just to highlight just the power of this is like the whole idea is to create something like this and modify it. Like you can modify this, iterate on it. And so one of the more obvious iterations would be to take, your company profile and paste it here into the instructions and say, hey, here's my company profile, so that you don't have to, like I did, put that in at the beginning of the conversation. You can have it already know that.
Yeah. Hey, Jonathan, would you talk just for a moment about this idea of treating ChatGPT or whatever LLM as an intern? I think that's a helpful kind of mental model.
Yes. So when you're having a dialogue with these LLMs, it's really helpful to kind of have a picture in your head of who you're talking to. And what I have found to be the most helpful picture is to imagine I have just hired a new intern at my company. And that makes me do things like really explain what I want them to do, what role I expect them to take on, because it's really helpful when you help, just like an intern, or when you're hiring an intern, you're narrowing their skill set. And so you kind of tell them, hey, I want you to be an expert at data analytics. And then you give them the steps that you want to follow and be really detailed. It's not that different from talking to an intern. If you say, hey, go make, some social media posts for our company, you're probably going to get some really crappy work products back. But if you give them some examples and you give them really clear instructions about what the voice should be and things like that, you'll actually get a good work product back. And so that's one thing that Neil and I have found is really helpful to think about when you're talking to these AI models.
Yeah. Yeah, and Mark just asked another question. I think we've got time to respond to it real quick. So once we finalize the job description, do we then create GPTs to generate specific interview questions for any interview stages or personas based on the job description and any interview stages and interview framework criteria? Jonathan, I want you to respond to that, but I just want to tell a quick story. As I mentioned earlier, we teach a mastermind program around a lot of the things that we were just talking about. And we had one of our members go through this and build this very thing. They built an interview guide generator based off of some profiles and materials that they had fed into it using some of the features that you saw here, and were able to create a guide that could be replicated and maybe even modified or repurposed depending on the use case for other users within the business. So the short answer to that is yes, and we've seen people that have gone through the program do that. So that's really exciting to see them using some of the information materials they already have in a new way. Anything to add to that, Jonathan?
No, that's exactly right. I mean, you get it, Mark. Like you can get a product from the custom GPT, that one's responsible for helping you create a good job description. And then you could create another one that's just, tailored to helping create really good interview questions based on a job description. You get it.
Yeah.
That's it. And
Yeah.
you can build these things in a matter of hours and start iterating on them and continuing to improve them. One other thing I want to mention real quick is that I demonstrated this using ChatGPT. Don't feel like this is the only chat tool out there that you can build things like custom GPTs. You can do this with Anthropic Claude, I believe it calls it projects. There's other tools that you can download onto your computer, like GPT for All. And there's another one that I really like called Recurse Chat. It's Mac only. But those will actually run completely on my computer. The data never leaves my computer. You have to have maybe a gaming computer or one of the M1 Macs to run these models. But that's a really powerful way, I just want to make sure it's clear that there's other ways to apply the techniques that we just demonstrated in a lot of other tools.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, with one more minute before we turn it back over to Alice and team, and Jonathan, could you go back to the slides for just a minute? We have two more slides here on our end. So one is a list of some of our favorite sources to find tools that might be helpful. As Jonathan just mentioned, there are lots of tools outside of ChatGPT. We think that's very extensible and very approachable. 80% or more of us are already using it to some extent, so that's why we teach it so heavily. But there are other tools, and these three websites are great places to see what else is out there. Actually, just before our session today, we were just talking about some tools for other use cases, so be sure to check those out. And just one quick way to connect with us. Please follow us and connect with us on LinkedIn. Anyone here, happy to accept and chat more there. And as I mentioned, we also have a mastermind course for HR folks to learn a lot of these AI skills, how to build custom GPTs, how to think about an adoption framework, and how to really be that expert, that go-to expert within the business or your team with these new tools. So just to level up and build those skills that we talked about that are so important. So be sure to check us out there. And with that, over to you, Alice.
Thank you so much. A couple things. One question from Mark was, are you turning memory off in Chat GPT to ensure you're not sharing proprietary data to Chat GPT?
No, that's not the reason. The reason I turn off memory is twofold. One is that I find it doesn't work very well. And the other is because I do demos like this. And so I don't want it to respond to me personally. I want it to be a little bit more generic for the demos. So
I've been writing a lot because obviously this is very apropos to what we do all the time. But I was chuckling when you said to talk to it, like a human, because it's just like, and I'm not going to say her word, but we all usually have her on our phone, that you'll say, no, SIRI, that is not correct. I'm looking for a place to eat hamburgers, or whatever the thing is. And then, when you're driving and it comes up with a different, and you're like, no, thank you, Siri. Oops, I said it. No, thank you. I need something. So it was funny because I had a laugh when you said that about talking nicely to your Chat GPT. So yes, and it is interesting just how you tweak one word or another word, the results that you'll get. And so I was writing down a lot of things that you had mentioned on here for sure, some keywords and how to bring that out. So I like that. Perfect. So, and you do have, if you go back to the screen for just a second, that shows how to connect with you guys. You can see the connect with us, the LinkedIn. It's Jonathan Flower and Neil Morelli there. If you have want to link with them, and you can definitely ask them more questions and send them information, and so they can answer any of your additional questions for sure. But thank you everyone for joining us today for our Wednesday webinar series. We appreciate a little bit about us as Talent Connections is a human resources executive search firm and consulting firm located in Atlanta, Georgia. We were founded in 1999 and actually just celebrated a 25th anniversary of perfecting our craft in HR services while creating thousands of transformative connections. And we were thankfully able to see a lot of those last week. Our sister company is Career Spa, provides career transition and coaching services tailored to each individual, helping you discover your career path and secure an advantage in this evolving job market. So you can visit our website at careerspa.net for more information about that for sure. The activity code, this has been approved through SHRM for one professional development credit. And that activity code you can see on the screen is 25-A as an Apple NGV4. Also, if you do go into that SHRM certification provider, that website, that portal, you can type in under keywords Talent Connections, and all of our webinars, our past webinars will come up. I just did this exercise the other day. You do have to put in the time frame because it will only bring up this one because it's January, but you can put in the word Talent Connections, and all of our 2024 webinars will come up as long as the dates are accurate on there. But definitely please make sure to note the activity code on your recertification application form. Also, remember to mark your calendars for our next Wednesday webinar, which will be Wednesday, February 12th, same time at 12 to 1 o'clock. And we really appreciate, let's see, I think there's one more question here. I don't know if Neil, if you've seen that when creating the custom GPT, there is a checkbox for opting out of OpenAI model training. Someone had mentioned that. So yeah, you can, and also this is recorded. If you are if you're an attendant of this, we will send out the recording for you so you can go back over these notes as well. Any last parting remarks or comments, Neil or Jonathan? We so appreciate your time today. As you can tell, it was a very interactive and lots of engagement with the crowd because of all of the because this is such a hot topic, and we're all learning how to best use it for our to make our everyday life simpler, for sure.
No,
Thank you very much, Alice. And I just wanted to mention in here, when you're configuring this, oh, well, I don't actually see it anymore. Maybe it's because I'm on a paid account, but there used to be a checkbox here for opting out of model training, because that was part of Mark's question, was, keeping this more private, I think was the other analysis. I'm not sure why I'm not actually seeing it there. So a little bit of a lull.
yeah. And
Thank you everyone very much for joining us. I really hope this is helpful for you and enables you to do more and contribute more because you're able to leverage these artificial intelligence tools.
Perfect.
Yeah,
thank you. Go ahead, Neil.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo that I think there's a huge opportunity for HR to have even more impact and to do more, not less, as Jonathan said. So that's our mantra here, and we'd love to tell you more about it. So please connect with us, and we'd love to follow up.
Perfect. Yes. Thank you, everyone, and thank you again for joining us. Thank you, Neil and Jonathan, for your time. We really appreciate it, and everyone have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.